Welcome, Knights of the Round Table. In Tales of the Arthurian Knights, become a hero in an adventurous story. You'll travel the land to complete quests and make choices that will steer your legendary journey. Thank you for joining me here at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Kevin Delp. Today I'm talking about a new game from WizKids called the Tales of the Arthurian Knights that draws players into the legendary world of King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table. It's a story-driven game where players face quests, make moral decisions, and experience branching narratives influenced by classic Arthurian myths. It's for 1 to 4 players and takes a few hours to play, and can be played either competitively or cooperatively. In today's video, I'll give you a brief look at some of the predecessors that inspired this game, then an overview of the game, then discuss my critiques and commendations. So let's dive in. There are actually a few games that have inspired this one. You may have heard of one, like the Tales of the Arabian Knights, all the way back in 2009. Now, that also has a narrative storytelling game with, of course, a different theme. You have the Arabian Knights, different kind of knights. I would say that the Arthurian Knight game has really streamlined this system for the better. But there are actually a couple more back from 1985. Another Tales of the Arabian Knights, really. This is many years old, 1985, like I said. And then there's the Star Trek, the adventure game, which is also has the storytelling narrative game. Instead of playing a specific character in this one, you get to command a starship, completing missions and a more episodic adventure within the Star Trek universe. But first, before we get into the critiques and commendations, let me give you a brief overview of the game. At the beginning, each player will choose a knight. They just have different colors, so nothing special about one over the other. The game is played over 3 ages, but you could decide to play fewer ages for a shorter game. So on your turn, you're going to first adjust any statuses you have based on cards you have in play, and then you'll move to have an encounter. Usually you'll just have standard encounters, but once in a while you might have a special encounter that involves quests or status cards. There are actually 3 types of standard encounters, which are really the meat of the game. You're going to pull a card from the encounter deck. It could be a character, a milieu, or a location card. These standard encounters will have another player read from the Book of Tales based on a number from your encounter. Characters are going to gain a feature that then gives a 4-digit number, and milieu cards give a 4-digit number based on what kind of terrain your knight is in. As you hear your story from the Book of Tales, you'll need to make decisions based on the description of the encounter. Usually you'll have to decide between 2 choices, but sometimes there are more choices available. You'll have to listen closely to determine what path you want to take for your knight. You'll face story-driven encounters that involve skill checks, battles, or moral choices. Each encounter presents options that can alter the story. You're going to normally roll dice and add them to your stats to see if you've passed or failed the encounter. Each encounter is going to be looking for certain kinds of stats. You'll track these consequences throughout the game with the decisions that lead to specific outcomes impacting your resources, your stats, or even the narrative path. Now, this continues as players collectively shape their tale through decisions and consequences, advancing the story each round. Now, each age has 4 rounds, so if you play a full game, you're going to have basically each person will have 12 turns, or there'll be 12 rounds. In a competitive game, the player with the most destiny points is the winner. And if you're playing co-op, you're trying to earn a certain number of destiny tokens for different levels of success. Now, I personally like the co-op version. Now, this is a little bit better for this type of story-driven game. I played it both ways, and it's been a real bummer when you're playing competitively and you lose like your whole turn because of something you did, or you probably didn't roll well. But co-op play really helps balance that out a lot more, so that's why I like it better. But some people might like that more challenging experience with competitive play. All right, now I'm going to give you critiques and then end with my commendations. Now, I think one of the big things I don't like is the luck factor in the skill checks. You're going to roll dice. I just like more strategic games personally. There have been a lot of bad rolls where players have been doomed or imprisoned. It doesn't really feel good when there's just a limited number of turns. And when you see other players who have super lucky rolls and are getting like amazing cards or really good story elements, or they're helping their stats, there's lots of amazing things can really happen in the game. But if you don't roll well or if something bad happens, then you just really don't have that, you don't really feel like you're doing well in the game. I think another critique are the pacing issues. Sometimes players are going to have longer turns, and sometimes players will have a shorter turn. I wish it was maybe a little bit more consistent. Another critique would be the familiar stories. Now, I'm not saying that familiar stories in that you have knowledge of King Arthur. I think that actually is fun and helpful. Now, there are multiple story paths in the game, and after a few playthroughs, players may start to see some of the same story elements, specifically if they take the same choices. We even came upon the same exact story because of the way the cards were drawn. Now, I could have, and I think I did, choose the other path, the other decision, but there was just a little bit more knowledge there since I had heard that same story before. Just another critique, I don't think this is like really bad or good, what I would have liked is to see asymmetrical characters. I think that would have been fun with giving knights special abilities or even weapons or something like that. Another thing I would have liked to see is some storylines that give a choice if you're a certain character. Like if you're Lancelot, and you come across a story that says if you're Lancelot, you can choose a specific path. I feel that the game tried to do this with story tokens. Players can sometimes gain these story tokens, but then the odds of them actually encountering that specific token's resolution is pretty slim. In the times that we've played, we've gained some story tokens, but we've never seen the actual story token be resolved. Now, I've seen in some of the stories be like, if you have story token, but we've never had the exact story token. So that's my one critique. I feel like this maybe could have been done a different way based on characters. All right, let's move to my commendations of the game, my likes. I really do love the rich storytelling in the game. I like the theme, and I think that is done so well with the stories. Their stories are written well. The Book of Tales, the Tales of the Arthurian Knights here is, it's big. It's big. There's a lot of stories in here. And I think the writer of the stories has done a good job capturing that whole mythos. The game excels in immersing the players in the knights of the Arthurian Knights with a lot of the branching narratives that reflect like moral complexity of the legends. Each quest feels purposeful. It feels like substantial. I shouldn't say every quest, but many of the quests do, keeping the players really invested in the story. The other thing I like in the game are the player choices. There are decisions in the game, and you have different paths that are diverge based on your choices, and some of them have a moral component to them. This adds to a very strong replayability in the game, and every playthrough can have different outcomes depending on players' decisions. And I mentioned this before, the co-op gameplay. I think that's a strength in this game. The co-op aspect is well designed. It promotes discussions, it promotes strategy, players sort of like working together, which I think fits nicely with the camaraderie and loyalty of the Arthurian lore. I like the artwork and the components. I really like the board art, the geography, the landmarks, the different counties, countries. The cards I like the cards as well in the game. The knights, they look cool as well. And like I said before, I wish they had some abilities. Now you can choose the different stats, which I think is fun. I wish that that could have been done maybe a little bit differently. There's so many stats. Maybe that could have been pared down a little bit. But overall, I really like that part of the game. Tales of the Arthurian Knights is a really good experience that is thriving on the storytelling, the decisions that you're making. It's a great fit for groups who enjoy maybe taking their time to explore those narratives. And overall, I think it's a worthy addition for fans of the Arthurian legend. And if you like co-op play, I think it makes the game even better. So let me know in the comments your favorite storytelling game, or if you played any of these other storytelling games that I've mentioned earlier in today's video.